now for more on what Iran's naming of its new supreme leader means, we're joined today by Dr. Robert Lawrence, professor of English and Turkic Studies at Dongduk Women's University. So, Professor Lawrence, Iran has named Mojtaba Khamenei, said will succeed his father, Ali Khamenei, as supreme leader. What does this mean for the Iranian regime?
Oh, good morning, and thank you for having me on today. For the Iranian regime, I think it really signals that the hardline elements of the government got their way for the most part. He has close ties to the IRGC. He served in the IRGC in the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. He's also very closely connected to besieged forces. And he's going to have a hardline stance against the U.S., Israel, and the West in general. It's important to note that he just lost several members of his family in last week's strikes as well. He will be controversial for some in Iran because he represents hereditary succession, which is, something that the revolution fought against. He's also got a bit of a reputation for election tampering from 2009. He's only a mid-level cleric. He's not an Ayatollah. And he's thought to have played a pretty prominent role in violent crackdowns against protesters in Iran over the years. But all in all, I think it's really it's a choice of continuity. He might be a little bit more actually extreme than his father, but for the most part, he's going to take on a very similar stance. It's also an act of defiance. It's a finger in the eye of the U.S. Donald Trump said that he wanted to have a much bigger role in choosing the next leader. I think that's pretty ambitious. I don't really think that's gonna happen. And for the time being, I think that despite there being some healthy opposition towards him, forces are going to coalesce behind him right now. So I think we'll see a lot less mixed messaging, and I think a continued defiant posture towards the U.S. and Israel.
I see. What Trump also said is Iran's next leader will not last long without U.S. approval. What does the new leadership mean for the United States and Israel, and how might the war unfold from here?
Okay. So, Israel's openly said that it's planning to attack whomever the Guardian Council chooses. I suspect that they'll also be looking for any rifts within the government that they'll be able to exploit. Donald Trump, he wants to impose change in the leadership that will be a little bit more West-leaning and less disruptive to the region. He thinks that Iran is the root of regional instability, so he wants a leader who will shift away from those revolutionary causes. Again, I'm not sure that this is the best way to go about that. I think it's pretty ambitious, but we'll see. As far as the direction of the war goes, it's obviously tough to predict, but there's no open source information that indicates there's any de-escalation in the coming days. Given Khamenei's credentials, I think he'll be eager to display strength right away. From a U.S. perspective, I understand that the U.S. George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group is on its way to the Middle East and to the region. It's not sure if that's going to be an additional strike group or if they're going to replace one of the strike groups that are there. But either way, that doesn't show a sign of de-escalation. And Netanyahu's continuously said that Israel will fight as long as it takes. So I don't see anything in the coming days that looks like it's going to de-escalate. It looks like for the foreseeable future, there's going to be conflict.
Right, and Iran's oil facilities were actually attacked for the first time since this war began. And Trump also signaled that attacks on Iran will intensify, and Israel says the war has entered what they call a new phase. So has the conflict reached a critical stage as the U.S. and Israel suggest?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how critical it is, but I do think we're going to see an uptick in the aerial campaign. So we're seeing aerial refuelers operating much further east than they were before, indicating that Israeli and U.S. planes are attacking deeper into Iran with their missions. It looks like they're going to go for Iran's industrial defense infrastructure. So they're going to be hitting factories, supply chains of drone and missile production, and they're aiming to destroy what they have right now and their ability to rebuild. So, now that aerial dominance is kind of firmly established, I think it's logical to assume that U.S. and Israeli forces are going to aggressively increase attacks. They're basically trying to prevent Iran from being able to project power outside of its own borders. So I think they'll intensify attacks until they think they've done that.
Right, and the Iranian president has apologized for attacks on Gulf neighbors. And this comes as the conflict spread to neighboring countries. How far could this war spill over?
Well, I think we're going to know a little bit more in the coming hours. It'll be interesting to hear what the new supreme leader has to say, if he's going to announce some sort of direction that he sees the war going. But there's some obvious ways that this could pretty quickly escalate. One, I would say, to the Houthis in Yemen. They have stayed out so far, but I doubt that's going to remain that way. I could see them attacking Saudi infrastructure. They could try to, disrupt shipping in the Red Sea. They could try to hit the east-west pipeline going through Saudi Arabia. That's an alternative to the Strait of Hormuz. In places like Turkey, they're of course worried about a refugee issue. They dealt with that with Syria for years, so I'm sure that they're concerned about refugees coming over their long border with Iran. Energy security, of course, is a global issue, and further damage to regional energy infrastructures that we've seen, or maybe desalination plants. We've seen these come into play in the last 24 to 36 hours. So this is a dangerous escalation that could have wide-ranging effects. Iran also claims that it still has more powerful, more modern missiles that it hasn't used yet. I think that'll be more increasingly difficult to actually bring into play with U.S. and Israeli aerial dominance, but that doesn't mean they don't have the launchers and the capacity to do it, because we've hit, I think, 4,000 targets now the U.S. and Israel have, and they're still able to launch drones and launch missiles. So, they have. We're not exactly sure how many missiles they have, I think, and there's nothing to say that they don't have that escalation capacity. In a much more maybe extreme way, Iran and its proxies are thought to have sleeper cells globally that they could put into play, maybe. But I think one crucial aspect that will affect the whole world, no matter what, right now, is all eyes are on the Straits of Hormuz. Open source data, I can see it right now. There's no activity going on through there. And you have 20% of both LNG and crude oil going through there every day. We've seen oil prices this morning spike. I think in February 16th, West Texas Intermediate was selling at 62, and it's now at 108 as of 10 minutes ago. So this is going to cause severe damage to the global economy. And there's no real indication that this is going to change for the next week or two. That's something that will affect all of us to the personal level, probably. But there's several ways where this could spill over into the region, into the global economy, of course.
Right. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Lawrence, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.